I have spent about 50 hours playing a newly released space cooking cozy game called Space Chef, and it's been a really wild ride. This isn't your run-of-the-mill put some eggs in a pan and chill type of game, because in Space Chef, your ingredients fight back. Here, we're going to be exploring vast planets, collecting tentacled ingredients, hunting weird creatures, and bringing them back to our kitchen to serve the local galaxy and make some money. But not only that, we also get to design our own space diner, make friends with the locals, and get into some good old trouble in this classic American cartoon-style take on the cozy cooking genre. So without further ado, let's see if Space Chef is worth our time. This video is brought to you by Blue Goo Games and their publisher, Quali, who is kind enough to sponsor this video in support of the channel. So if this game catches your interest, please check out Space Chef's launch in the link below. To start this off, I wanted to talk about the game's initial setup and hook, including the first thing you'll encounter when starting the game, which is the character creation. Immediately, the inspiration for the game's art style shines here. It's very classic American cartoon style, allowing you to make very unique looking characters that remind me of something that would come out of Ed and Eddie or Family Guy. And while the character creation system itself is pretty simple, you get body type options, different hairstyles, various voices or grunts, different hairs and skin colors. I was able to pretty much make myself in game, which I feel is always a decent test. It doesn't take itself seriously at all, and the only negative I have here are that there's no clothing option aside from being able to choose t-shirt prints and changing clothing color. And for some reason, they show no love to beards. Beards do not exist for player characters in this game, which is unfortunate. But after deciding on your look, you get to name your character and your business, and so the Gloomy Ghost Space Cafe was born. And finally, we can start the game. So how the story goes is that you moved into the solar system equivalent of a small town. And what we're looking to do here is to follow in the footsteps of our Grandma Jane, who's a well-known local cook, and she sort of guides us in getting our restaurant business started. So that means setting up the kitchen and cooking up our first few recipes. Now, there's basically 3 major steps when it comes to cooking in Space Chef. Number 1 is gathering ingredients, which starts off really simple. And by that, I mean going to the basement, using your spatula to swat a couple of space roaches under the floor, and using those as your restaurant's first main protein source. Later on, it does get super interesting with all the various biomes and the diverse ingredients we'll get from there, but for now, this is what we gotta start with. Once you have your ingredients, the second step is cooking it, and that involves crafting as well as maintaining your kitchen appliances. From your ovens to your stoves to your blenders, everything needs to be made from scratch, and everything has a durability. I'll get back to that later. Once you have something to cook on though, like the barrel grill, the first kitchen appliance you'll get access to, you play a quick cooking minigame. Different appliances sometimes have different minigames, but really it all just boils down to timing the line. And the quality of the food item depends on how well your timing is. After that, you follow the recipe, click on the food you'd like to make from the menu, and voila! It's time for step 3, which is serving. But wait, we don't actually have a restaurant yet, because in the early game, the only option we really have when it comes to getting our food to the customers is by doing deliveries, which means going out of the hatch, riding our spaceship, and delivering the food to wherever the customer is. And that's how the early game cooking experience went for me. As you unlock more ingredients, encounter brand new creatures, and figure out new recipes, this gets more and more complicated. However, the gameplay loop remains the same. Gather, cook, deliver. Now, what's really surprising here for me was that coming into this game, I really was expecting that running your own space diner experience right from the get-go. But really, the first, I would say, 10 to 12 hours is more like Space Uber, which is not bad by any means. Once I got into the groove of it, it actually felt like a really solid gameplay loop. But I have a feeling this can turn off some people who were expecting that running your own restaurant and designing an experience right from the bat. Now, luckily, there is that feature as well, which unlocks after reaching a certain level with your chef's reputation. And once you do, you'll be able to open your restaurant during a designated lunch rush and serve customers. You'll prepare tables and seats, take orders, you'll even have to clean their tables so more customers could come in. But the best thing is that you're gonna have all the freedom in the world to decorate your restaurant however you'd like. You can not only add floor space and have unique layouts, but the way you unlock decorations in this game is just by randomly inspecting decor items you see out in the world. Like for example, in people's rooms, in other restaurants, sometimes even in abandoned space stations. And these items then become available for you to use at your own place. You can change the wallpapers, the floors. You can even change all of the colors. The only problem is that the restaurant feature is not a complete replacement to the delivery, as there is only a set amount of time when your restaurant can be open. And also, adding more tables and chairs from our customers does take a significant amount of investment as well. So it truly takes a while for the restaurant to ramp up, and for your initial hours in the game, I wouldn't expect that restaurant running fantasy to be fulfilled immediately, because funding it requires hours of space Ubering. But eventually, it will kick into gear, and oh boy, when money is not a problem in this game, you can get very creative with how you design your restaurant. If they could somehow lower the prices of stuff and maybe open a second window in the evening for a dinner rush of some sort so you can still open the restaurant, I think that would help a lot. But as it is now, it's super fun to start with, but then 15 hours later when you're still doing deliveries and you just want to focus on your restaurant, it does get a little bit tedious. Now, thankfully, aside from cooking and running your restaurant, whether delivery or dine-in, another major feature of Space Chef is its exploration, which I would argue is really what's gonna pull people into this game. So when you're out of your little space trailer and you're riding your ship, you get access to a pretty large explorable area divided into zones, starting with the inner zone. And in the inner zone, not only will you be discovering other inhabitants, NPCs, and interesting locations, but you'll also get access to explorable planets. And these planets are very unique on their own. Some are desert planets, some are filled with ice and snow, and some of them are completely overrun with water. But regardless, your goal is to explore each of these planets, figure out how to harvest their wildlife, so you can turn them into delicious dishes. Now, the explorable areas do start off feeling limited because initially you are blocked off by things like vines or stones needing you to unlock certain tools at first. But once I started unlocking those, the sheer size of the maps and the diversity of the biomes in the game was finally able to showcase themselves. And the creatures are interesting too. Some are straight up dinosaurs, some can only be harvested through certain means, and some inhabitants of these planets you'll actually be able to talk to. And once you start leveling up your exploration skill, you'll get access to things like a better solar panel, allowing you to venture further and further from the solar system center, making the rest of the zones, the outer zone and the far zone, as well as their planets, explorable as well. Now, since I've mentioned leveling up, I think this is the perfect time to talk about the progression system in the game. In my opinion, this is the part of Space Chef that is really in need of a few key adjustments to make the overall experience a lot smoother. Because right now, it's one of those areas in the game that feel all over the place, grindy, and a lot of times detrimentally confusing. First of all, there's 5 major skills that you're going to be leveling up in Space Chef. 6 if you include your chef's reputation. These skills are combat, cooking, exploration, farming, and mining. They're all self-explanatory, and the way you level them is simply by doing them, so that part is actually straightforward. I have no problems with it. What I did have trouble with though is how the game fails at seamlessly guiding you towards the next step you should be taking. Multiple times throughout my playthrough, I would encounter what I call a progression roadblock. Whether it was needing a specific tool to access a new area, hunting for a material I couldn't find, or needing a recipe I hadn't unlocked. In most games, the usual design philosophy would dictate that there should be clues for players to give them an idea about where to go next, usually in the form of dialogue, markers, or tooltips. But in Space Chef, it just doesn't do that. It felt like I needed to encounter some of these people or locations by chance. And so, every roadblock felt like a dead end because I wasn't getting anything to point me in the right direction until chance led me to stumble upon things, which made me feel very lost. Now, to save you some time if you decide to play it, here's the key thing that I realized after understanding the pattern of the game. Each planet has quests that unlock a certain tool or a certain upgrade to that tool, that allows you to unlock new areas in all the different planets. And those newer areas would typically include new biomes, new ingredients, or even quest objectives that were previously inaccessible. And that's mainly how you progress. I didn't know that, so I tried leveling the skills I knew. Mining, farming, exploring, which all ended up being a waste of time because they didn't bring me any closer to my goal of unlocking whatever it was I needed. I was stuck on the first 2 planets farming basic ingredients my first 15 hours because I thought I just had to level up, which was frustrating. And the problem is, this confusing style of teaching is prevalent everywhere, even for simple crafting. For example, I desperately needed rubber, which I later found out is abundant in space stations. But because these stations are filled with shooting enemies and no oxygen zones, and I didn't have a gun or a spacesuit yet, my initial thought was, oh, the game's telling me I'm not meant to be here yet. I then spent 3 whole hours scouring the galaxy, checking every shop for rubber, until I was completely out of options. The game gives you no hint that the materials or tools or quests you need to do are locked behind the very dangers you're trying to avoid. And this was the same experience I had when unlocking multiple other tools as well. It goes completely against that fundamental rule most gamers know, that when things are too dangerous, the game's telling you you're not meant to be here yet. Here, there are times you just gotta push through. And it would have been helpful if we at least got clues that yes, you should push through and maybe you could get something out of it. The radio system, which periodically gives you hints about gathering, is perfect for this, but for some reason, the devs decided that this is information you should just stumble upon by chance. Lastly, the story and questing. The questing suffers from the same issues that I had with the progression system. While the story initially started off really interesting, because of my slow progress and the lack of guidance during the quests themselves, by the time things really started moving, I had already been away from the story for a long time to really get attached to the characters. There was a solid 30 hours of me just grinding and progressing in between me starting the game and the story, and me unlocking everything I needed to explore the areas I needed to access, and that I feel took away from the flow. And part of it was, again, the lack of guidance. I could have had an experience where I was progressing some of the story as I explored, but since I didn't stumble upon the things I needed to do so, that ended up not being my experience. There was this quest with Billy where I needed to find a power source for a robot we're rebuilding, and the clue as to where to get that power source boiled down to essentially, if you find a drone parked somewhere, then maybe I could steal the power source. And after that quest, we ended up with a bunch of coordinates which I was supposed to bring to my map guy, which again, who? Where? So you get how frustrating this can be and how hard this makes it for people to get into the story. Now, a little bit of a saving grace, or for some people, a major feature of the game that could really pull people in is the romance. Now, granted, it was the aspect of the game I explored the least because the character I wanted to romance has some pretty mid to late game preferences, but yes, you could romance people by discovering what their favorite dishes are and gifting it to them. There's also no gender lock, nor a limit on how many you can romance according to the devs, so that's pretty cool. Romance to your heart's content. Overall, I did enjoy my time with Space Chef. It's not perfect, and there are parts of it that heavily need tweaking, but in terms of what most people are looking for when playing this type of game, I think they nailed the core fantasy of it. If you want to play as a chef who travels around various planets, encountering new and interesting creatures, traversing harsh environments for the rarest ingredients to cook, and you enjoy managing and designing your own space diner, then this is for you. Space Chef really shines when you treat it as an exploration game first, restaurant management cozy simulator second. However, if you're looking for a great story, or if you dislike a game that doesn't hold your hand, then this would be quite the frustrating experience for you. Thankfully, looking at the devs' replies on Steam, they are hearing the feedback about the progression system, so adjustments should be on their way. If you'd like to support the channel, please feel free to join either the Patreon or the YouTube membership for exclusive content, shoutouts at the end of the video, and early access to every single one I make. Otherwise, a simple like and subscribe are more than enough to help. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.